More significant, and I think of more interest to most of the people here, is the other aspect that's a real problem for us as a company, and that's the issue of counterparty risk. The risk we take by placing our funds with other exchanges, with other entities, and how we minimise the risk for us, and by doing that minimise the risk for our customers. And that's something which I'm going to focus on in this brief presentation, just to give an idea of how we handle that risk, and also what we believe the industry should do to move forward and improve upon the current situation. So, in the conventional marketplace, you've got various metrics that are used to measure counterparty risk. They're not great, they're not foolproof, but they do give a starting point, a framework to measure where that risk comes from. In the digital currency world, we don't have that. Essentially, all participants, even the established players, are startups. They may have been around for a few years, but a few years is the key point. They're not, in conventional terms, what would be considered a long-standing company. Add to that mix a situation where you've got people actively trying to hack those funds, actively trying to get access to those exchange customer funds. So you can imagine in that environment it's quite challenging, both for the exchange but also for the customer of those exchanges. How do they decide which exchange to use? How do they decide how much to risk with any given counterparty? So each person's going to be different, and each person will have their own perspective on how much risk they should take for the funds under their control. What I can do is talk about, in broad terms, what we do as a company. So when we look at how we're going to manage that risk, the first thing we look at is how much time do we need to leave those funds at risk with any given counterparty. The key for us is the shortest length of time that we can have funds out of our control, that minimises the risk. So we're continually moving funds in and out through to various exchanges to cut down on the amount of risk we have at any time with any given counterparty. It's not perfect, because you have to have those funds with a counterparty for a period of time to be able to achieve that, but we minimise that time window. The second area, which I think is also key and probably the most important, we spread our risk across multiple counterparties. We don't put our capital in any one individual exchange, individual counterparty. We spread that risk. And for us, the reason is we need to be in a situation where we can continue operating, we can continue providing customer service, even if one of our counterparties fails. So, from our perspective, we wouldn't risk more than 15% of our reserves with any given exchange. In addition to that, we tier those exchanges. We look at exchanges in terms of three key parameters to decide how much capital we will risk with those exchanges. So we look at where the institution is headquartered. Is it in a jurisdiction that is reputable? Is it in a jurisdiction where there are customer protections in place? We're more likely to give a higher rating to an exchange that's in a more established jurisdiction than one in an offshore location. Second element is how transparent is the corporate structure and the management team. From our perspective, we're going to give preference to those exchanges that have got a clear management team with good expertise in a broad range of sectors: technology, finance, risk control. And thirdly, the longevity of the organisation. In many cases, people think that's the most important. But against that, I would argue Bitfinex were quite long established, were one of the larger in the industry, and yet they still got hacked. So longevity in of itself isn't going to protect you against the exchange being hacked or exchange failure of some kind. So, as I said, that's what we personally use to try and manage the risk between various exchanges. Each person's going to be different, but the one thing I would say, above everything else, is spread the risk across multiple counterparties, because they may be the most honest, most robust, most well-financed exchange out there, but if they're hacked, you don't know what the extent of that compromise will be. So always spread that risk and make sure you have funds available to keep yourself solvent.